Hello, dear Anabel. Hello. It's so lovely to have you here. I'm really, really excited to be speaking to you today. Thank you so much.
I'm trying to contain this. It's like, let's go.
Right, exactly. It's like sisters together. Let's do this. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the invitation to have this conversation, this dance with you and with whatever wisdom and whatever wants to pour forth. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there's so much. So we just met at a conference, actually just 2 weeks ago in Nashville. And it was an incredible conference with William and Claire Henry. And it was about my two favorite things, alien and Christian mysticism. So I was, already like super pumped to be there. And then I saw you walk in. I was like, who is this goddess? It's like something here really, really resonates. Mm-hmm. And then I overheard you talking about womb alchemy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my goodness. Yes, we are definitely on the same page. Mm-hmm. So I get to ask you for the first time, because we haven't had this conversation yet. How did you come into womb alchemy, and what are the wonderful ways that you are practicing it?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come into this space and share. And it's so lovely that, through this womb speak, I often find the other sisters and other beautiful women who are like, I don't know what you're talking about, but tell me more. Right. And this is our first date. So it's really beautiful to be able to record our first date.
Yes, exactly.
So thank you for that. And so womb shamanism, which is what I call this path. And it's a very ancient practice. And it was born from a womb religion that existed in ancient times. And how it's practiced now, it's not very practiced because it's become sort of like one of those forgotten mysteries of the feminine that have been, they've been forgotten because it was such a dangerous path to walk for women. And like many of the mysteries, our mothers, our grandmothers kind of stayed silent, and worked with it in ways that wove into other aspects of reality, of other aspects that were acceptable. So you find the threads of womb shamanism throughout every religion, throughout every indigenous traditions, through ceremonies. It's very embedded in it. And I feel like that's been one of the most exciting and also challenging aspects of remembering, because womb shamanism is really about remembering what is in our blood, what is in our bones. And so that has been quite the challenge, because we have all these, I call them, there are all these like, it's like hunting for a treasure, there's all these traps, right. and there's all these puzzles, and there's all these things that it really asks you to be listening to the inner guidance, to cultivate the gnosis, because this is a path of gnosis. Womb shamanism is a path of direct revelation. It is being able to drop into what is alive in your body and work with that. And that's what I love about womb shamanism, because it doesn't belong to any particular lineage. It doesn't belong to anyone. There is no, what is this term? Appropriation, there's no appropriation in that, because womb shamanism really is the return to your own direct revelation and reinstatement of the divine, and of ourselves as the temple, of ourselves as the vessel, of ourselves as that medicine that is needed for the world. And so I love that, the womb always calls us in. It doesn't call us out. It calls us in and then it pours us out. And that's what I just absolutely adore about this path. And it is also, it's we've read about, we read about it like in the dark mother, the dark goddess paths. But it's also very kind of fragmented, there's all these different threads. So I feel like womb shamanism really brings everything together, and it allows us to see the greater fabric being woven through all these different particular threads. So for myself, I came across this through the dream world, which was really fascinating. So yeah. I was at a well, I'll let you speak because I spoke a lot already.
No, please, no. I absolutely love it.
I can get going. You have to.
Okay, no. I will just confirm what you're saying, that I found the same thing, and even in speaking to other womb priestesses, maybe who are following like bee shamanism or Greek traditions, other traditions, there's a womb consciousness that we're all plugging into. And in a way, we don't really need like formal training in it, as you say, or, there isn't the one teacher. There's just lots of threads.
Yeah, there is lots of threads. And it really is the blueprint of creation. It is allowing us to tap into that blueprint of creation that exists beyond, anything. It holds everything, and so for myself, I was actually so blessed and, guided. And I thank my ancestors and whoever did the work before me that I am able to wake up to these things in my lifetime. And I did come across teachers, a couple that were carriers of this, and I apprenticed with them for 6-7 years. And also taught for their mystery school. So for myself, it was like really diving deep into underworld work. And in that underworld work is really where a lot of this remembrance returned, a lot of this being able to discern, because there's a lot of distortion. It is, womb shamanism really is power. It simply is power of creation. And it doesn't belong to the good and it doesn't belong to the bad. It's actually both, which is why in my work, I speak a lot of, unless we understand the full spectrum of our humanity and of our reality, we are missing out on an aspect of power that can be brought forth. And of course, with great power, great responsibility, and so there is a lot of, that's why I say it requires so much self-honesty, self-responsibility, just really having the integrity, strengthening that fabric of integrity within oneself, because it can be misused, and we see it everywhere. So the womb is such a powerful portal of creative power, creative beingness. And unless we are really in integrity with it, it will use our own darkness to move out into the world. Wow. And, I have this saying, like, I'm very clear that darkness knows me more than I know myself, which is why I walk slowly. And that is so important for me because, there's just, and you understand this, Carlota, that the more we commit to something, the greater the temptations are going to be. So there is an aspect of, of not, there's many forces that will not benefit from us remembering this power, this sovereignty that exists in the woman body and the woman blueprint. And so all these different threads are going to be used and amplified to move us out of that commitment. So that's kind of where, for me, it's just, it's so powerful. And of course, I feel like once you drop into this, it just becomes a way of life as well. It's not necessarily, you can practice whatever you practice, whatever path is in your experiential wisdom. you can still practice that, but you can find even greater depths within it, because now you have access to a consciousness that holds all paths. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So many gems in there, so much depth in your words. Yeah, I could really feel them in my womb.
Right. And I call it we're womb storming.
I love that.
We're womb storming.
So you said you started with some dream work, and then I'd love to know, like, now how you support people to practically bring this into their lives.
So, I often, the approach with my clients, it's always to meet them where they are. Because I do feel that, going into the underworld, which is eventually where I'm like, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
It does require preparedness. It's kind of like entering into a great journey or a great pilgrimage or a great quest or a great hike even. There's an aspect that needs to be prepared for the journey. And that's one of the things that I see a lot, that, there isn't that preparedness that actually cultivates the reverence of the journey that we are going to embark on. And reverence is such a huge key, I believe, to more grace on the journey. When it's how we approach things matters, because it imprints the journey that will unfold. And so when I meet with my clients, typically, it's so fascinating, right? Because what do you say? Like, oh, okay, we're just going to go to hell real quick and find the light there. But it's a lot of lineage work. It's a lot of grief work. It's a lot of darkness and trauma. And so there is and that's why, it's the underworld, because these are things that are there, but we're not very conscious of. So we work a lot with the unconscious, which is where the shamanism aspect comes in, because in order for us to journey there, we've got to move out of the mind. We've got to move out of the make sense. And so we journey into the unconscious, through different modalities, somatic modalities, and also shamanic journeying, and, these different things. But And what's so beautiful about that is that it allows us the access to all timelines that are living through us now, because we carry so many different timelines in our body, and our body remembers it. It's our mind that has forgotten. And so it's, how do we reconnect that? And through that, the portal of imagination, the imaginal realms, because this is kind of where we begin to weave the remembrance. Like, it may not make sense, but however, there's a clue there, and so it's a really beautiful, dark and deep journey. But what comes through that is the true light. For me, I believe this. It's the true ascension. And that's why I say and I say this a lot, that we must descend in order to ascend, because that's the true ascension. When we return to our earthly bodies that we are in, we will find our spirit light body. And that is what emerges, and so it's a lot.
Agreed. You're totally speaking my language. I found the same things. I've intuitively journeyed to the same places, and I feel that we can navigate the space of our womb shamanically in this sort of very feminine way, which includes the body. So it is very somatic, isn't it? It's in that feeling sense, and allowing us to anchor into our bodies first, because we can never leave a place that we've not been. So I think it's important to come home first. Mm-hmm. And also the visuals that we see inside the womb are quite incredible.
Yes.
I find, as you say, it's all there, right? The ancestry,
the memories,
the lineages, the memories, the different lives. And we think that we access it from our third eye or from the field out here. but we're reverting that to accessing it to in our wombs. Yeah.
Yes. And actually, and I feel like that's what really gives us the true vision, is because it gives us, and I feel like that's even from the sacred text of, for those who have eyes to see, for those who have ears to hear, it really does. When we drop into that space, we descend into that space, it grants us vision, and I kind of describe it, I try to find metaphors or things that make it a little bit more digestible, right? But I say, we've been functioning from here. We've been functioning from this very mental logos aspect, right? And we have forgotten that there's a mythos that is the beautiful counterpart to the logos, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, that's because we're in the West, where it's more scientific, more factual, which is the logos. And then the mythos sort of remained in the East through that's why we have these beautiful, rich goddess traditions and religions and paths. Mm-hmm. However, I feel that what's happening for women at this time is that we are being asked to birth that union, the mythos and the logos. Yes. Right. And so it's kind of finding, where are we at? Am I moved greater by the logos? Is my life defined by this logos, or is it defined by the mythos? So I think that that's the first distinction that needs to happen, right? Am I someone who's more of a visionary, imaginal realm, and because the point is to really begin to identify, where do I have to dive into to bring that balance, to bring that harmony inside of me? And so I would say, for myself, in my own experience, very logos, very control, very success defined by the West, hustle, just very, even culturally, I am from Mexico. And so it's kind of this like hard work and you just have to do it. And just all this very forceful kind of way of life. And so for myself it was about, okay, I am functioning from here. This is where I'm creating my world from, right? These belief systems and these cultural thoughts. And so it was how we drop in. And I feel like this is kind of the first space that we come into, the heart opening. Whenever we begin our journey, it's kind of like, I can love myself, self-love. I love you. I love you. I forgive you. I forgive everything, because the heart desires to connect. It wants to open. It wants to pour forth. So we come into this place, and this is where a lot of the spiritual paths teach and lead us. A lot of the traditions, it's like the forgiveness, especially with religion, right? Where religion kind of stops us here, where it's like, you have to forgive everything that happens to you, and feel bad when you do something, and, all this programming, right? Yeah. And really what I feel our sacred duty is to even go further, is to, yes, come into this beautiful space. But when we aren't connected to our womb power, then we don't have the boundaries to have a sustainable sharing from the heart. We're not actually giving from our overflow. We're giving from depletion. We're giving because it's a responsibility, because that's what we think we need to do. Especially as women, we're such caretakers and lovers, so we want to care for. And why do we find ourselves depleted? Why do we find ourselves in this space of constantly giving? Because we are not connected to our true power center, which is our womb space, right. And in the womb, all the lineage lives, all the darkness that has come before, our origins of darkness live within our wombs. And so I feel that's the greatest journey that we can take, because when we go there, we discover, who am I really? What is the work I am here to birth? And that kind of dissolves all the comparison, or, oh, she's doing that, I want to do that, or that, or this is, because right. You move out of that space and you surrender, because the womb work requires constant surrender to the unknown. And that is so scary, right? And so when we're constantly surrendering, then we're also being refined. We're also being shown, this is what I'm here to birth, and we're here to birth not just human babies. We are here to birth the sacred work. And so that body of work can only emerge from that depth of the womb space, that portal. And then in my experience, it sort of rises on its own. I don't have to think about like, oh, let me take this workshop to teach me how to put my work out into the world. Like I really feel like all of the energy goes there to that refinement, to that care, to that true self-love. Because we can only truly love ourselves when we remember where we come from, when we remember what we are made of and what moves through us, not just because like, oh, I love myself, I'm in this human body, I'm Anabel, right? But no, I belong to the divine. This is a vessel, an instrument to play the songs of God, to play that music that is needed in the world, to bring more coherence into it. And so when I am in that womb space, naturally it begins to rise, that again, the ascension, the true ascension, it begins to rise, and then it's filtered through the heart. So it's this not just raw power. Now it comes into the filtering of the heart. How can I be of greatest service to the world? Where is my place? Who do I need to connect with? All this, and it's an overflow, right? And then it continues to rise up into our minds, and the higher mind, it creates systems, and it's such a gift because we, sometimes we think, let's get rid of the ego, and I feel like, no, why would we want to get rid of the ego? We've got to reinstate its place, and its place is that our egoic self is in service to the heart. And so when that happens, is that it begins to have the systems, create the things that are needed to be done in a practical and material space, so that this beautiful energy and body of work can make its way out into the world. And for me, there is no greater birth than that, because that is the sacred child. That is the feminine and masculine energies coming together and really merging to birth forth the sacred child, which is the sacred work out into the world.
Yes, absolutely. Amen. Yes. And I love that word that you use, refinement, and this idea to me that my framework of reference is this fire, that we build this fire. And I always look at the fire inside the womb space as this place of alchemy where the masculine and the feminine really come together and merge. And then that fire rises to the heart and then up to the pineal gland. And I feel that texture that you're talking about through the medicine of each one of our like fire and energy, and absolutely that is the place to create from. So my cells are singing and hearing.
They're singing, and and it's so fascinating because even where we met, right, this Christian mysticism and for myself, it was so, what I loved about that weekend was that I am more well-versed in the Catholic art and the Catholic spaces and ritual. And I studied religion growing up because for me, my search for God began when I lost my father. And so that I went from religion to like just looking, someone baptize me, someone give me access to God.
Oh, wow. So that's incredible. Tell me everything.
Through a wide spectrum of religions. And yes, something, when it would come to really consecrating my life to that path, something would move me out of that. There would be a voice, there would be a dream, there would be something. And so seeing the artwork, like the Christian mysticism, it speaks so much of the path of the dove, which I feel is the light body, right? Like the ultimate, like that is our light body. We're in heaven, the cosmos, all of that. However, I have found that through the Catholic lineages is where we find the womb the pagan, the feminine mysteries of the Dark Mother, and where a lot of the ceremony and ritual of the Catholic Church has been co-opted from these feminine traditions. And so for me to be able to kind of cross-reference the artwork, which are such powerful portals of wisdom, it's been amazing, and also requires that vision, requires that looking past the veil of dogma that is placed before our eyes, so that we can truly find, what is actually true, what rings true inside my body. And so I love that your background is also, in this Catholic belief, because it's so rich with the feminine mysteries. I'm like, wow, the priestess up there worshiping the goddess, worshiping, and he thinks he's doing something else, but all the symbolism that is there, right? And always the mother somewhere, you find her somewhere. And in Mexico, it's one of the countries that actually venerates the mother above the sun in Catholic traditions, So we have the Virgen de Guadalupe. And so that it's the Black Madonna, really, through my explorations and research, it's that Black Madonna that was brought to the Americas, that brought the lineages of the Marys, that brought the, that wisdom and married it with the indigenous cultures, because that's how it was going to keep evolving. And, it's always evolving. And these, what's so beautiful about the feminine mysteries is it doesn't give a shit about what it looks like. Right. It will weave itself. It's like, sure, this is the facade, but you got to have the vision and the ears to see beyond, and you will find me. Right. And that's what I love, because it's like everywhere I scratch, it's like there's a little womb wink of the mother that's like, I'm right here.
Yes. And where do you see this going? I mean, I'm all for a kind of revival of the true Gnostic teachings in a way that people can really digest them and understand them and begin to see through to the truth.
Yes. So, it's so fascinating. I worked with the Magdalene for many years, and the archetype and the story of the Magdalene, right? And like I said, I work deeply with the dream work, because that's kind of how things come to me and my guidance, and it's been an intense journey. But I'm at a place where in my own dreams, it's really where my apprenticeship of life is unfolding. And about with 2020, when we had this whole thing, the December of 2019, I began to have a series of visions of what was going to unfold for the next 10 years. And at that time, it was this messages of like, this decade's going to be filled with miracles. You will see what you haven't seen since the times of Christ. It was all these, different things. And of course, we had kind of like coming into the Aquarian age and, all these different aspects of it. So it's like, okay, that makes sense. Kind of what I didn't know. And I have learned is that miracles don't always feel good. Oh. Because I was thinking like, wow, miracles, yes, like, I'm all for it.
Party time, yeah.
And how it's unfolded, obviously, we are in miraculous times, because we are seeing a dissolving and a disintegration of many, many things and many, many dogmatic structures, So there's a big decentralization that is happening, not just of the financial, worldly, but within the spiritual, that it's allowing for it to rise again through all these cracks in the fabric of society. And so when this first started, I was called into the garden, and 2020 was kind of like it was like, Anabel, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to say? We need guidance. We need the leadership. We need all these things. because the world's like burning, it's falling apart. And for me, it was like going to the garden. That was my guidance, going to the garden, sit and listen. And so I did that for most of 2020, where I was really in this deep listening. And what began to emerge was a lot of dreams of the Virgen de Guadalupe. Mm-hmm. And it was from the Bible, of the revelations, that a lot of those threads were kind of dancing within me. And she said, you have to come visit me in my home, which is in Mexico City, the Basilica. And so this was kind of in June, and I was like, okay. And she, in a dream, dissolved the Magdalene and became this Mary of the Apocalypse, as she presented herself to me, and said, I am here to work with you now. Wow. This is our time now. Yeah. And so she's, went in December, because I like to take the end of the year as a time for me to go inward and sort of do my own rebirthing. And so she said, come to my home. So I went to her home, and it was an absolutely amazing, incredibly powerful times that it's taken me, this was last year, it's taken me pretty much all of this year to integrate, to really tune into these things. I was sent into a lot of womb portals that are awakening in Mexico, because the body of Mexico is awakening. And what it's doing is so beautiful, Carlota, because I see this with my clients, is that the land is calling them back home. It's like they're having these awakenings, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's a spiritual awakening, and what am I doing? And it's the land that is awakening, and it is vibrating, and it is awakening our bodies. So we're not doing this ourselves. And it's so powerful, because the land is our ally inside of this. It's like it holds the memories, the bones of our ancestors. We hold them. And when we come into that communion, that's where we find the true remembrance. And so I feel this is what's happening for women now, is that we are being called back into our homeland, into our lineages, to recover, to clear, to bring the forgiveness, to bring the balm of love, so that it can speak through us. And at the same time, disintegrate within us what doesn't serve, or what is distorted, the filters that cannot hear the deeper weaving. And it's so fascinating. And you can cut me off at any time. Okay.
No, I'm just in awe. I'm just reeling, because I know I have some beautiful Mexican sisters in my community, and I know that they will just be so thrilled to hear you talk. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you today, because I really felt like they needed that kind of Mexican, support and understanding what to do now, because they're having some big awakenings.
Yes.
These last
and really it's that Mary line calling us back, and you can see it through religion. You can see it through indigenous. You can see it, whatever the path it is that you're working on. It's calling us deeper into the body, which is the body of earth, because that's our first mother, and it is inviting us to, let me teach you, let me show you. When I was deep in my apprenticeship, I had this vision of, Mexico has a lot of pain, which is why we are behind in many ways, in the sense of, we are catching up. I feel even you can see, like here in the States, you had the feminist movement, which kind of brought this independence to women. And in Mexico, it's kind of barely coming into that, like, oh, well, I am a woman and I can be empowered. And, because there's a lot of cultural conditioning. And at the same time, now this feminist movement can be a trap for the true feminine. Because that feminist movement doesn't honor union. It doesn't honor the masculine and the feminine as counterparts, as gifted counterparts, right? It says, there's still a divisive thread. And so I feel like within the religion, when we can really see beyond that, we find the Marys that are holding the threads of this. And through the indigenous, we find the brujas. There's all these lineages that they were weaving together long before us. And it is about us returning to that remembrance. And what I was going to say is that I had this dream of when the Catholic Church came to Mexico, there was these very powerful medicine women, and kind of all over the world this happened. But when the Spanish came and they were enforcing the religion, one of the things was to burn the witches and and all of that. So a lot of the curanderas, which is what they were called, were turned into these witches, or called brujas, because they knew the ways of the natural world, and they also knew how to journey into the underworld. They had all of these things that were, religion, nope, we can't. We are brokering God. What do you mean you have God inside of you?
Middleman, yeah.
Yes. And so there's a lot of pain of what happened to women in the land of Mexico. And in my vision, I saw how the religion, and of course, this isn't, it's a metaphor. Could have happened, could have not happened. But the wombs were taken out of these women and they were buried separately. So it was like they were taken out of their power was taken, and it was buried separate from their physical bodies. Oh. And so that's what held this sort of numbing, this sort of, what's happened to the feminine body there in the land. Oh, and last year, when I went to Mexico and when I was communing with the land and in that deep listening, I had this dream, and it was those wombs were pulsing again. Those wombs that were buried separate from them were pulsing again, and were reconnecting in this. And I get the chills because this is so powerful for me. And they were reconnecting this grid of power, of remembrance, of magic, of true vision. And it was kind of like inviting us. And again, that's why I say, I feel, and I do feel that this is happening for every lineage, not just, whether Spanish or Mexican or, South American or any of that. It's happening for all of us because it is a web of creation that's reconnecting again, and that can only move through our physical bodies to be expressed in the world. And it can only move through a cleansed and purified vessel so that its pristineness isn't distorted out into the world. And I think that's the distortion of power. It's when it moves, when this beautiful energy moves through the body, but there's still all these filters of distortion or unresolved pain. It can move it sort of distorts it, and it moves it out into the world, into a lot of, the sexual shadows and addictions, and, and even in the feminine work, so much shadow, sister wound, mother wounds, a lot of through the Tantra communities, and there's a lot of distortion of what true feminine power is. It isn't just about having an amazing orgasm to manifest shit like that. That is not feminine power. That can be a distortion. It includes that, but it isn't that. And so, there's so much.
Yeah, there's so much, my God. And so if if there are enough of us who are practicing these old ways, but this rebirth and going out into the world with our pristine wombs, then this can change everything. It changes the way we birth, and it changes the way the feminine rises up again. Yes. And I'm also interested in this ascension topic that we touched upon, because I think this is so interesting, and we talked about it so much with William and Claire too. This idea that, ascension, we know, is not new. It's really, really ancient. And every time that there have been communities that have tried to ascend, or have ascended, even in the way that they had this technology, from Atlantis to the scenes, Cathars, even within our own with the Jesus and Mary mysteries. You know, it's all there, and it's always been cut down because of this middleman. Like, you can't ascend by yourself. You need support. You need the church. And so, what are your views on that? On like how can we approach ascension in this day and age?
Well, I love that we're talking about it, first of all, because I think that, we tend to go towards one or the other. And I call this the white river or the red river, right? Where it's like the white river is this sort of like upper chakras or portals, whatever you want to call them, where it's like godliness, purity, chastity, all these different things, right? And which is what I believe the religion has done. It has cut us off from our very primal desires, our human self. Or we tend to go towards the lower and dismiss the higher aspect, right? So, and I do believe, like a lot of the traditions that even we spoke about in that weekend, it's very beautiful. And of course, I think we're talking upper world, So there's the underworld, middle world, and upper world. So in that sense, they are teachings of the upper world.
Yes.
And, everything is kind of geared towards that. If you go back into some of the even like Chinese traditions, into some of the very ancient traditions, you find that while they were teaching that the upper world, there was always a dragon teaching, which held the underworld mysteries. And so we see that a lot in our work. One of the most popular ones is Kuan Yin. Mm-hmm. She is usually riding a dragon at her feet. The Virgin Mary has a snake at her feet. There's a lot of where you find this upper world beingness sitting on a dragon. And I feel that's really when a woman learns to ride her dragon, is because she has learned to work with the natural elements of life, which are, earth, fire, the elementals, because that's the dragons. The dragons are the elements. That's what they represented. So they represented our human nature. And so when that's the underworld, learning how do I ride this fire, this sexuality, these shadows, this air, this density, this depression, all of those things are our dragon wisdom. And so when we learn to ride that and to work with them as in allyship, then they support our ascended nature, our true ascended nature. And, now in the West, a lot of the dragon myths are depicted with, wings and all that. But if you move into more of an ancient past, they didn't need wings because the dragons could navigate all worlds. They could go deep into the underworld and up into the heavens. Like there was no limitations. And so I believe, just like the feminine was suppressed, this dragon wisdom was also twisted, to create this conquering journey where the hero must conquer its dragon, or tame their dragons, where really no. And Carla, I think this is so funny because my son, he is almost 16. He'll be 16 this weekend. And when he began to awaken into his sexual nature, I right away began to, this is your dragon body. This is your dragon energy. It's either going to work with you or it's going to work against you. You're going to have a lifetime of just trying to mend what your dragon destroys. Wow. And so learning how to work with that, right? And there was this movie that came out, How to Tame Your Dragon. Yes. It's like an animated movie. But for me, it was like, wow, this is a great teaching.
Perfect. I'm going to use that with my son when the time comes.
Yes, because, it teaches that you don't force yourself on the dragon. You learn, you build a relationship. And then you have the power of flight. You have the power to dive deep into places that your own human has limitations of. And so for me, that's where we see it. We just, again, don't have the vision for it, but it is there, and a lot of the Eastern traditions became of more of the nature of the upper world, right? Where then the indigenous traditions were more of the lower nature. How do we survive? How do we, learn the elements, because we have to survive.
Right.
And it, in a way, it's both that are coming together. And again, this is why I believe this is the decade of union, because it's uniting all these polarities. It is bringing, and it is allowing us to feel also that being a woman in a woman's body is a paradox. We are a mystery. So it's like whenever I hear someone's like, I'm trying to understand who I am, good luck. Because that's the whole point.
Right, exactly.
You have to let go of trying to understand.
Yeah.
Because we are embodying a mystery that is forever changing, always evolving. And that's our nature. Change is our nature. Shape-shifting is our nature. Being attuned to the seasons is a gift, where we don't always want to be in summer. We're going to have times when we are in our winter, we are in our spring. So how do we work with these elemental dragons of nature, and allow them to support our journeys? So for me, that's in these lineages, and then we talked about the Jesus and Magdalene mysteries. And I believe that was a merging again of the dragon path, which was Magdalene, and the dove path, which was Jesus. And that was them coming together to bring that unity. And which is why, they inspire this so much, and the teachings of, sacred sexuality through the Magdalene lineage, and as well as, that ascension, that true resurrection that happens in the body as we know it, through the Jesus path. And so, it's really beautiful to see her womb wisdom and his heart wisdom, right? Of that service and forgiveness and outpouring, but anchored by the dragon path of the Magdalene and the Marys. So, and that's Isis. That is Nana.
The priestesses of Isis who actually held this path of fire, and this, which is the path of the soul in many ways.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that, it's weird to explain, because I'm always like, it doesn't mean that men don't have souls. It's just, but the Magdalene path is that like internal fire, that representation of the soul within the body, and that dynamic feminine energy that joins with the masculine, which is more of the space and time, the quantum realm, and that arena.
Absolutely. Yes. And we are, and I say this, I speak because sometimes this can get distorted, especially now with this gender conversation and all of these things. Like, we're speaking of energies, of essences, when we're speaking into masculine and feminine. And then, of course, it's my belief that when we are born into a body, like for myself, I was born into my womanhood. And so my magic has a different texture than a man's magic. However, I need my counterpart, to be able to, and that doesn't mean I have to marry him or it has to be a relationship, but it has to be a collaborative, energetic merging, right? Where I recognize and value your gifts, and the same is done for me. And I feel, we are in that restoration of even ourselves valuing it, because it's us who don't value our feminine values. When we come into that space collectively, it will be valued, but we cannot find something valued that we don't even know. Right. We are leaders in the energetic sense that we are leading these things. But when we have forgotten, we don't know, we're disconnected. We don't know where we're going. We don't know where we come from. Therefore, these qualities can't really take root. They can't really blossom. And so, as you mentioned before of that, when we come together, and our wombs, our wombs are always speaking. We're together long enough, they sync to one another. We'll be menstruating at the same time. We'll be feeling that because they have their own creation conversation happening,
Wow.
And so when we begin to embody, and this is why the embodiment thing is so important for me, the embodiment path is because we then begin to recognize the textures within our body that allow us discernment and that allow us the resonance of truth, and don't, and this is, it can be confusing, because that's why I also feel it's a slow path. It's not going to happen in one workshop. It's not going to happen overnight. It is a life path, a life apprenticeship, right? Yes. And so, but the more of us that come into this space, we can now come together and weave together, and I said, we all carry a different color thread for the greater weaving, and so there is no, you're taking too much from me, or I am, that's distortion. That is wounding of lack, of not enoughness. It is actually, here's my color, there's your color. And what picture are we painting together? Because that is, we all have a place. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because when you really begin to live your life like that, there is no competition. Your life force isn't being stolen and into those.
You know who you are. Yeah.
Dead spaces.
Because you know who you are, what your medicine is.
And you're a blessing everywhere you go, in any space, because, being confident isn't about like feeling better than everyone. Like, oh, I've got my shit together and I am amazing. It's knowing who you are, and that no matter where you are, your God is there with you, whatever form that is, and knowing that nothing is an accident, right? It weaves together. Like we were brought together there. Who knows? I mean, if we think about it, we're like, oh, what a wonderful coincidence. We get to meet there. Was it though?
Yeah, right.
Here we are weaving a different conversation, that and that will ripple out. And if I was threatened by you, or you were threatened by me, or, that couldn't happen. It would stop that. And so that's where it's so important to come back inward and really work with what has happened in our lineages and in our bodies, so that we can step into that birthright, which is this priestess lineage work, beauty, amazingness, and bring it forth into the time today. Like your book, The Modern
Medicine Woman. Yeah. We have a new way of looking of bringing these mysteries back and making them alive again. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And even more vibrant and more beautiful and also the healing that comes for our children, when we're, through the epigenetics, like that's more we heal backwards, but we also heal our lineages forward. And so that's so important to know that, because so for us mothers, it's so, the world right now, what it's reflecting back to our children is that they will have no world. They may not have a place for them to live their lives. And that's very traumatizing, and so it's, but as we have that inner peace, we can also influence their experience in the sense of holding a higher vision of life for them. And speaking life into our children rather than speaking worry and speaking, doom, this constant doom. And I tell my son, I'm like, when he's like, oh, did you hear this? And I was like, I know, it's exciting, isn't it? Because I can feel the power of what's going to come through that, and then he's like, Mom, it's a disaster. And I'm like, well, it's only a disaster if you don't see beyond it. It's kind of like birth. If you're birthing life, you're in this pain and this agony, and there's a place where you just want to give up, or, when you come to that ring of fire. I believe we're collectively in that ring of fire right now, and so it's taking each contraction at a time and breathing through it and trusting that life is being birthed through this seemingly chaotic end of times.
That's beautiful. That is the position of the woman as well, like the midwife who has to stay grounded and open-hearted and just present, whatever is happening, and non-judgmental. So yes, we're like midwifing and birthing this new, era in. I have a question for you around like the church, and how do you approach that? Do you still go to church, or do you take your son to church? How does it feel now?
I don't take my son to church, but I do go whenever I get a chance, and I go visit every church I can wherever I am in a different land or place, and they all have their different saints and their different messages, and I will go and I will sit in church and I pray, and I have my Virgen de Guadalupe in my home. She is the queen of this space until she says otherwise. And I think it's so important, because whenever we're called to work with any particular archetype, you could say, or any particular deity, or really is so important to remember that it's not the outside we are worshiping. I don't build altars to worship outside. I build altars to remind me of what lives inside of me. And because we are holographic beings, visual senses, ceremony, ritual, altars, that's so important for the feminine body, because that brings us back into this feminine temple space that awakens, that helps us awaken, the fragrances, the myrrh, the frankincense, all of these different things are elements that are working to remind us what is living already inside of us. And they all have different teachings for us, So it's important, I feel, for the feminine to have those sacred spaces and connections. If it's going to church, if it's going out to nature, if it's going into the ocean, whatever it feels like for you, that is like this aspect, right? And I go to mass, and I go and I will take my my sacraments, and because it's like, and I have my confession times, right? That's my self-forgiveness practices. And
that's so beautiful. I think it's important to say that, because I think, for many people, perhaps they're, Italian and Mexican, I'm sure, there's so much of the Catholic influence, and they're waking up to these new tonalities and undercurrents, but they still want to go to church and have their own personal experience. Perhaps they don't believe in the church as an institution, but they find that these are the dwelling places for some energies to,
And that's so important, because, when it's knowing that the spirituality we carry is inside of ourselves, because sometimes you think it's the church, like or you will leave a church and feel that, oh, wow, I left that path and now my spirituality is there, and what I experienced there, was it even true? All of these different things that can be so confusing. And it's knowing that it wasn't the church, it was you. It was you, it was this wisdom is in you. And when we are called, and I really do believe a lot of the Catholic Church holds, again, a lot of the feminine mysteries, the way that they pray, the way that they, do all these things, the places that women hold in the church, they're the ones leading Bible studies. They're the ones leading prayer circles. They're the ones, so they're doing the work.
I love that.
However, it's in a, in a different, there's an aspect that they're still not remembering. And I was invited, I say there's so many undercover feminine mystery holders, womb shamans in the church. But if you get a chance to, I made a post on this encounter that I had with a priest on a way to Hawaii to do a womb awakening retreat. And it was so powerful and so potent, my experience with him. So if you get a chance, read it. I'll send it to you after we're done with this. A year after that, and see, this is the thing that even though I was like, I'm not interested in the church, somehow it always finds me. It calls me back. You know, it wasn't like I was like, oh, the Catholic Church is amazing. It's like, it finds me. And so I was sitting with a client of mine who was going through a procedure in a hospital. And I went to the chapel. And in the chapel, I was wearing a Magdalene bracelet. And in the chapel, this woman approaches me and she says, is that a Mary or a Magdalene bracelet? And I said, Magdalene bracelet. And she's like, she's like, you know, I don't know what it is about you, but tell me, what do you do? You know, and she was curious. And I said, oh, well, how did I tell you about this?
Yes.
Do you really want to know?
Right.
And so we began to talk about the Magdalene. You know, that was the approach. And so she says to me, I have a Bible study group for women that I lead in this church. Would you come and talk to us about the Magdalene? Because I was explaining how Magdalene wasn't this victim, whore, or, it was sort of like, this is another. And she said, because I feel that a lot of the women there, they have disconnected from a sense of their own truth because the church doesn't allow it. And she's a leader inside of this, and I was like, wow, that is sure, I will come. And so for a year, I went and did this monthly Bible study thing with the group. And really help them shift the perspectives without it wasn't, the conversation's different. And I think this is where our shape-shifting gifts come in, because I'm speaking their language, but I'm introducing a new perspective.
Like you couldn't come in full on and
I'm not like, screw this thing. You are disconnected. We need to liberate our sexuality.
Right.
And what I find is that so many women who are called to the church are these deep devotional Marys. They hold that frequency. And that is why they're devoted to this. And it doesn't matter what they cut off or sacrifice. I feel a lot of the good, beautiful nuns, because there's a lot of evil witches in it too, hold that of the longing for the divine communion, for that upper world. They hold the Mother Mary frequency, and have to abandon, in some ways, unbeknownst to them, the Magdalene frequencies, which is the dragon, right? And so it was a really beautiful experience. And at the end of the year for Christmas, I was invited. And this was one of my childhood dreams. I was like, I want to be a preacher. This was like me. I want to preach. I want to, and I would always say, how come in the church, there's no place for women to do that?
Yeah.
And so I was invited to their Christmas celebration and to speak about just something. She's like, you have to be very careful what you're going to say. But I was given 15 minutes to stand on the podium of the church and really in their own language seed, because that's what we're doing. We're planting seeds. I am standing there as a conduit of a certain wisdom that is, I'm just, it may not reach anyone or it may reach one, but that is the work. And so that was one of my dreams come true through that, right?
Well done. Wow. You're really on the front line there.
Well, I don't know what I'm on, but
that's what's so incredible. Like it's just one that is so inspiring. I mean, I can't even imagine me going to Italy and starting up that conversation.
Yes, you will do that at some point, when you are, but that's why it's important that we learn to differentiate the dogma from the wisdom, because it's almost like this sifting. We have to remember, and it's not going to be through vision or through hearing it. It's going to be through that resonance that we clear in the body, where it's like, it can look the same, but we are looking at two different things, And so that's where I feel like this womb path is so incredible, because it will put you through hell, but only because the hell is everything that is false on us, that has been imposed on us. And that is hell. But when we burn away those things, we are left with heaven here on earth in this body, no matter where we are. And then we have the bandwidth to be with the suffering of the world, to be with the grief, to doula the grief, to doula the pain, to doula the suffering. And that's, for me, that alchemical vessel, of these esoteric traditions of the alchemical vessel is a sealed vessel. Only in a sealed vessel can true transformation happen. And that, for me, is when we weave together ourselves with our divine nature, and we are in this constant a soul alignment. It's not, we're informed from there, not from the external.
Right. That's what I call soul union. I think of this word as a soul union, where we unite really with our souls, with all the, the light and dark, the human heart, everything comes together. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Anabel, I could sit and talk to you for days on end.
How long has it been? 3 hours?
Yeah, right, exactly. But where can people find your wonderful work?
Well, thank you. Well, right now, my website's going through a rebirth, but find me on social media, on Instagram mostly is where I share a little bit more, share the full spectrum of my experience, and yeah, so that's kind of where, or you can go on my website and sign up for my newsletter, and stay connected to wherever, we're weaving, but it's constantly.
It is constantly shifting. I know that is just how it is,
That's the mystery. That's
reincarnating, and the new codes are coming in, and
Yes.
And so I will put all of your details obviously underneath the video so people can connect with you and come to your wonderful, ceremonies and, retreats.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. And I really want to encourage whoever's tuning in. Well, first of all, thank you for making for granting us the space, because this is an investment, our time is an investment. But I thank you, Carlota, for allowing me to come into your space and speak these words into it. And may they serve someone who needs to hear these things. And I'm excited to our unfolding relationship and friendship and sisterhood, and just, it's so beautiful to come to this and
connect,
be able to see you and recognize you. What a blessing. I'm so grateful. And my ancestors, I feel like they always get excited because it's like, oh, new lineage. We get to, bake bread together.
Yes, no, exactly. I want to come to Mexico with you.
We come into the kitchen, and yes, and there I am dreaming up of a pilgrimage into Mexico to dive in deeper to these things we spoke of, of communing with the land and sort of be guided. And when the time is right, our timing, realities don't always align, with the ancestors and spirit world and mine. But that
sounds like a really, really amazing opportunity. And I'm sure that, so many women and, families would love to jump on that. I'm just so thrilled to know that you're out there doing this work, and I want you to preach around the world and bring this work out.
This is how we have our childhood dreams, but we don't know how they're going to turn out.
Right, exactly.
I was like, I want to be a professor, a preacher, or a lawyer. These were my things. And now it's like, or a journalist. And I'm like, wow, I get to be all of those.
Yes, I can totally see it. Yeah, exactly. I can totally see it. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much.
And thank you so much. And
I bow to your lineage and your wisdom and your beauty. And yes, we're here to thrive. It really is a time for us to thrive, to move from that survival into thriving, into allowing the wisdom to green us, green our lives, bring back that life and that radiance to walk it in this lifetime, if we so choose. So
yeah. Yes, absolutely. Amen to that. Yes. Thank you so much, Anabel. And I'm so looking forward to sharing this conversation with the world. And so many blessings to you. And I will see you really soon.
Many blessings to you all and to you. Thank you.